Camping is a fun way to be outside and enjoy nature, but sometimes it's not all fun, and games just like nature itself. This video explores 5 devastating cases in which people mysteriously disappeared after they had gone camping. They left happily but never made it back, leaving families, loved ones, and investigators baffled and grasping in the dark. On June 14, 1969, the Martin family, William, his wife, and their 2 sons, Dennis and his older brother, set off for a camping trip in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, hoping for a peaceful escape from city life. They arrived at Spence Field, where they pitched their tents and enjoyed the fresh mountain air. As the afternoon unfolded, Dennis and his brother joined 2 other boys for a game of hide-and-seek. Laughter echoed through the campsite as they plotted a playful prank to surprise the adults. At around 4:30 p.m., Dennis, wearing a bright red shirt, dashed into the trees while the others scattered. Moments later, the older boys reappeared, giggling over their successful trick, except Dennis never emerged from his hiding spot. At first, William Martin called out to his son, expecting him to come running, but as minutes passed and there was no response, unease crept in. While the Martins frantically searched for Dennis about 7 miles away, Harold Key and his family were hiking near Sea Branch when they heard a chilling scream cut through the forest. Moments later, they spotted a shadowy figure darting through the trees. Something about its movements unsettled them, but they had no idea their eerie encounter might be linked to a missing child. Back at Spence Field, worry turned into full-blown panic. As the sun set, darkness swallowed the forest, making the search even more difficult. At 8:30 p.m., a desperate William Martin reported his son's disappearance to park officials at Cades Cove. Just when things couldn't get worse, a thunderstorm rolled in, drenching the area with heavy rain and fierce winds. Still, searchers pressed on through the night, determined to find Dennis. By the next morning, the search had grown into a massive operation with over 240 volunteers, including park rangers, local Boy Scouts, and concerned hikers, combing the rugged terrain. Days passed, but no sign of Dennis was found, and theories about his fate began to emerge. Some believed he had simply wandered too far and was unable to survive in the wilderness. Others feared he had been attacked by a bear or a wild boar. The most unsettling theory, however, was that Dennis had been abducted. William Martin himself leaned toward this possibility, especially after learning about the unknown man spotted fleeing the woods near the time of Dennis's disappearance. The FBI and park rangers investigated the sighting, but no concrete evidence linked it to the case. On July 3rd, searchers came across a disturbing clue, a strong odor of decay near the west prong. Hopes of a breakthrough surged, but despite thorough investigation, no remains were found. The Martin family even offered a $5,000 reward for information, but it led nowhere. After months of relentless searching, park officials officially ended the hunt on September 11th. Then, in 1985, a ginseng hunter came forward, claiming he had found a child's skeletal remains 3 miles from Dennis's last known location. Investigators rushed to check, but once again, nothing was found. Decades later, Dennis Martin's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the Great Smoky Mountains, an unsolved case that continues to spark speculation, debate, and heartache. In the summer of 2015, the Kunz family set off for what seemed like a simple camping trip to Timber Creek Campground, a quiet retreat hidden deep in the Idaho wilderness. It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway, just a family enjoying the great outdoors. But what started as a routine adventure soon spiraled into a baffling mystery. Along for the trip were Dior Kunz and Jessica Mitchell, their lively 2-year-old son, Dior Kunz Jr., Jessica's grandfather, Bob Walton, and Isaac Rainwand, a man whose presence added an air of mystery to the whole excursion. On the evening of July 9th, the group packed up their truck and hit the road, making their way through the rugged terrain. Along the way, they stopped for diesel, attempted to grab dinner in town but had no luck, and ended up settling for snacks from a convenience store before finally reaching the campsite in the dark. Little Dior, eager to help, assisted his parents in setting up camp and building a fire before the family turned in for the night, blissfully unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. The next morning started off like any other camping trip. The group lounged around the campsite, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere. At one point, Jessica asked her grandfather, Bob Walton, to keep an eye on Dior, while she and Vernal took a short walk around the area with Isaac. It should have been a simple request, one that any parent makes without a second thought. But by 2 p.m., their world was turned upside down. While fishing with Isaac, Jessica and Vernal suddenly realized that their son was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as they rushed back to the campsite, calling his name and frantically searching the surrounding area. At 2:22 p.m., Vernal called 911, with Jessica making another desperate call at 2:26 p.m. Authorities were alerted at 2:28 p.m., and by 3:45 p.m., search and rescue teams arrived. What followed was a massive effort to locate the missing toddler. For 2 weeks, rescue teams scoured the rugged terrain using ATVs, helicopters, horses, K-9 units, and even drones. Despite their exhaustive efforts, there was no sign of Dior, not a footprint, not a shred of clothing, nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Then, in a shocking turn of events, 6 months later in January 2016, the Lemhi County Sheriff's Office dropped a bombshell. Dior Kunz and Jessica Mitchell were officially named as suspects in their son's disappearance. Suspicion had been growing due to inconsistencies in their statements, and private investigator Philip Klein, who had been hired by the family, uncovered some troubling details. Both parents had undergone multiple polygraph tests, with Vernal reportedly failing 5 and Jessica failing 4. The inconsistencies in their stories, combined with the failed lie detector tests, raised serious questions about what really happened to Dior. Klein speculated that the child might have been the victim of foul play, whether accidental or intentional, and even accused Jessica of knowing more than she was letting on. The case grew even stranger when, in 2016, the couple was evicted from their home for unpaid rent. Among the abandoned belongings, investigators found Dior's camouflage jacket, the very one he was supposedly wearing when he disappeared. This discovery only deepened the mystery and fueled further suspicion. Despite all these strange twists, no arrests were ever made, and Dior Kunz Jr.'s disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. Vernal and Jessica separated in 2016, with Jessica eventually remarrying, but both have continued to insist they had nothing to do with their son's vanishing act. To this day, the case remains wide open, with no answers and no closure for the little boy who seemingly disappeared without a trace. The Timber Creek campground, once just a peaceful escape, is now forever linked to one of Idaho's most baffling missing person case. It was Labor Day weekend in 1975, and the Newton family from Manchester, Maine, was soaking up the great outdoors at Natanis Point Campground. Nestled deep in the woods near the Canadian border, it was the perfect spot for some classic camping fun: s'mores, campfires, and lazy afternoons by the water. No one could have imagined that this peaceful getaway would soon turn into one of the largest search and rescue missions Maine had ever seen. On the morning of September 1st, Ron Newton hopped into his pickup truck and rumbled off to gather firewood, assuming it would be a quick errand. But his 4-year-old son, Kurt, had other plans. Not wanting to be left behind, the little guy grabbed his trusty red tricycle and pedaled after his dad, his tiny legs pumping furiously as he followed the dusty road. Enter Lou Ellen Hansen, a 13-year-old girl from a neighboring campsite who happened to spot Kurt zooming past. She called out to him, but the determined toddler kept on trucking, completely focused on catching up to his dad. Meanwhile, Jack Hansen, Lou Allen's father and the campground's caretaker, was making his usual rounds when he stumbled upon a red tricycle abandoned near the campground's dump. Not thinking much of it, he did what any groundskeeper might do. He tossed it onto the trash heap and went about his day. Back at the campsite, Jill Newton, Kurt's mom, was scrubbing mud off his sneakers when she suddenly realized he was nowhere in sight. At first, she figured he must be nearby, But after asking a few campers if they'd seen him, the sinking feeling in her stomach started to grow. When Ron returned and confirmed Kurt hadn't been with him, panic set in. Desperate, they ran into Jack Hansen and asked if he had seen their son, specifically a little boy riding a red tricycle. Jack's face must have said it all. "The tricycle?" he responded. "Yeah, I saw it, but no kid." When he led them to the dump, there it was, tossed onto the trash pile like a forgotten toy. But Kurt was gone. What followed was a massive search effort, unlike anything Maine had seen before. First, the Newtons and fellow campers scoured the area, calling Kurt's name and checking every possible hiding spot. Then, authorities arrived, bringing in game wardens, tracking dogs, and even helicopters equipped with loudspeakers to blast Kurt's name through the dense forest. As the search stretched on, Jill Newton overheard volunteers discussing high-tech aircraft used in the Vietnam War, planes designed to detect heat signatures from great heights. If they could find enemy soldiers in the jungle, surely they could find a lost little boy in the Maine woods, right? Without hesitation, she pushed for one of these planes to be brought in. The state acted quickly, flying in the specialized aircraft from Florida, hoping for a miracle. But no miracle came. Days passed, and despite thousands of volunteers combing the woods, Kurt was nowhere to be found. His mother, refusing to give up, even dug into a deep hole in the forest that looked like the perfect hiding spot for a scared child. But it was empty. By September 12th, after 10 grueling days, the official search ended. Over 3,000 people had scoured every inch of the wilderness, yet not a single clue surfaced. Theories ran wild. Some believed Kurt had simply gotten lost, wandering deeper into the woods and away from the campsite. Given the freezing nighttime temperatures, survival would have been nearly impossible. But Kurt's parents had a different theory, one far more unsettling. What if their son hadn't been lost at all? What if he had been kidnapped? With the Canadian border so close, they feared he might have been taken across into Quebec. Determined to chase this possibility, they flooded Quebec with missing child posters, even translating them into French to reach more people. Sadly, their search yielded no solid leads. To this day, the disappearance of Kurt Newton remains one of Maine's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The little blonde-haired boy who set off on his tricycle that morning was never seen again. It was supposed to be just another peaceful fishing trip, a father and son bonding over the thrill of reeling in the perfect catch. But for 12-year-old Garrett Bardsley, that morning at Kuberant Lake in Utah's rugged wilderness would be his last known moment before disappearing without a trace. Garrett and his father, Kevin, were part of a larger Boy Scout group, 18 boys and about 6 or 7 adults, enjoying a weekend of adventure in the Uinta Mountains. Like any eager young fisherman, Garrett was determined to snag a big one. Unfortunately, fishing can be a messy business, and before long, his socks, pants, and shoes were soaked through. Uncomfortable in his wet clothes, he decided to make a quick trip back to their campsite, just 250 feet away, to change. He assured his father that he'd be back in no time, ready to land a fish for breakfast. The campsite, Kuberant number 4, was up a hill, a short and familiar walk the group had taken multiple times before. It was a routine trek, nothing dangerous or unusual. So, Kevin watched as his son trudged off, thinking nothing of it and focusing back on his fishing. But minutes turned into 20 and Garrett was still nowhere to be seen. That's when a sinking feeling crept in. Concerned, Kevin packed up his fishing gear and made his way back to camp, expecting to find Garrett there. Maybe distracted by something or chatting with the other scouts. But when he arrived, his heart dropped. Garrett wasn't there. Even worse, none of the other boys had seen him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Panic set in fast. Kevin wasted no time sounding the alarm, alerting the rest of the group and calling in authorities. What followed was one of the largest search efforts in the area's history. Hundreds of searchers, both official and volunteer, poured into the wilderness, scouring every possible route Garrett could have taken. They searched on foot, on horseback, and even used trained search dogs, hoping for any sign of the missing boy. As the search stretched into the night of Sunday, August 21st, hope remained high. Maybe he had just wandered too far and would turn up tired, hungry, but otherwise fine. But as days passed with no sign of him, optimism faded. The only clue? A single Nike sock, Garrett's, discovered about half a mile away in a rugged boulder field. The sock was damp and wadded up, as if someone had pulled it off a wet foot. But beyond that, there was nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no signs of struggle, just silence. After 9 grueling days, the official search was called off, but Garrett's family refused to give up. Devoted friends and volunteers kept searching well into October, making trips back at least twice a week, desperate for answers. Even after the brutal winter of 2004, they returned in the spring to search again. Yet, despite every effort, no further clues ever surfaced. The mystery of Garrett Bardsley has since become the subject of intense speculation. Some believe he fell victim to a wild animal, perhaps a mountain lion or a bear. Others suspect foul play, suggesting he may have been abducted by a stranger, or even someone known to the group. Another theory is that he got lost or injured in the unforgiving terrain, unable to call for help. But with no evidence to confirm any of these ideas, all we're left with is speculation. Years later, Garrett's disappearance remains one of Utah's most perplexing mysteries. His story continues to raise awareness about missing children and the unpredictable dangers of the wilderness. Chelsea Grimm, a 32-year-old from San Diego, California, disappeared on September 28, 2023, while on a cross-country road trip. The last time anyone saw her, she was in Williams, Arizona, and the circumstances surrounding her vanishing remain as puzzling as ever. Her case is currently listed as missing, and the mystery continues to leave everyone scratching their heads. Chelsea set out on September 24, 2023, with plans to attend a wedding in Connecticut. Originally, she planned to fly, but when the airline wouldn't let her bring her pet bearded dragon, Roz, or Roxy, depending on the day, she decided to hit the road instead. Talk about dedication to your pet. She cruised through Phoenix, Arizona on September 27th, where she met up with her sister and a friend. However, the next day, she canceled plans for lunch with the same friend. Later that day, Chelsea was spotted at a motel in Seligman, Arizona, trying to book a room. She was described as acting a little disoriented, even trying to pay with euros instead of US dollars. Now, that's a sign something might not be right. She called her parents from the motel, letting them know her trip was taking longer than expected, and she wouldn't be making it to the wedding after all. She mentioned she was going to camp nearby for a few days before heading back to California. On September 28th, things took another strange turn when an officer found Chelsea's car parked near a war memorial in Williams, Arizona. She explained to the officer that she'd gotten emotional after taking photos for a lost soldier project and didn't want to drive while upset. The officer, being helpful, suggested some safe spots to camp, including a Love's truck stop. By September 30th, a woodcutter spotted Chelsea camping in her car near Ash Fork, Arizona. She didn't seem to be in any distress and appeared fine, but after that, silence. No calls, no texts, no social media posts. Then, on October 3rd, hunters stumbled upon Chelsea's white 2019 Ford Escape, abandoned on a Forest Service road in the Kabob National Forest, northeast of Ash Fork. The car had 2 flat tires but no sign of Chelsea. The following day, her parents filed a missing person report with Phoenix PD, unable to reach her. When authorities checked the car, they found Chelsea's wallet, phone, sleeping bag, and bearded dragon were missing, but some of her clothes and a camera were left behind. The car was locked, and there were no signs of a struggle. Since her disappearance, there's been no activity on her phone, bank account, or social media. No one can figure out what happened, and police haven't found any evidence of foul play. The case is at a dead end, leaving a lot of room for speculation. Some believe Chelsea might have been going through a mental health crisis, given her confused behavior. After all, a photographer wouldn't leave their camera behind unless something was off. Others suspect she might have met someone, possibly even an abductor, and point to the euros she tried to pay with as a clue. Then there's the theory that outlaws could have deflated her tires and taken advantage of the situation to mug or kidnap her. Desperate for answers, Chelsea's family hired a private detective to help with the search, but so far, no new leads have turned up. The mystery of Chelsea Grim's disappearance still has everyone puzzled. Her family and friends continue to hold on to hope that one day she'll come home safely and the truth will finally come to light.